Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This week I get a chance to sit down with Scott Reekers from EASTMAN'S. He's over their tag hub, and he works with Brian Barney on the EASTMAN'S Elevated podcast, and as well with Dan Percar and producing the Beyond the Grid TV, which is EASTMAN'S YouTube TV show, and it's a really cool show. Anyway, me and Scott talk about lots of different stuff. He's a big time mule deer hunter, very knowledgeable about application strategy and all that. So we kind of get into that, and I wanted to release this episode while we're sort of starting to get into the thick of application season. Also, he set me up with the EASTMAN'S Tag Hub Elite membership, and wow, it is really impressive. It's a super just valuable tool to have for researching tags, states. You know, it's kind of got all your information you need in one place as far as licenses, costs, season dates, and, you know, draw odds, everything you really need to really buckle down and do some research and figure out, you know, your tag and application strategy for this year. So highly recommend you check out EASTMAN'S Tag Hub, and actually if you use the code HQ20, that's HQ20, you'll get 20% off your first order with EASTMAN'S, and you can add that at checkout. I really recommend you guys check it out. I haven't even, like I said, I've played with it a little bit, but I've just hit the tip of the iceberg of what's possible. It's a very powerful tool. It's already been helping me out with my elk strategy for next year, but there's a lot in there. So if you're looking for a place, kind of a one-stop shop with all the information you need to really buckle down into some research before you start applying, highly recommend you check out EASTMAN'S Tag Hub and use that code HQ20 for 20% off your first order. Without a whole lot of further ado, I think you guys will enjoy this episode, so let's just jump right in. All right, so I'm here with my guest today, Scott Reekers from EASTMAN'S Hunting Journal. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man, thanks for reaching out to me. We kind of connected on social media and kind of put this together just yesterday, so it's good to be able to connect kind of short notice.
Yes, it is great to do that. So, man, I am excited to be here. I'm excited to chat with you and be able to talk with you. I'll full disclosure, I saw that, Baker had interacted with you guys a little bit. So I have to give him a little bit of credit. You know, he accidentally kind of, put the Hunter's Quest on my radar to communicate with. So that's a good thing.
Well, you just see him on your
connection.
Did you see me on his story or something?
Yeah, I saw that he shared that, and I think I've been following you on social for a little while, and so it was one of those things. I was like, oh, I need to chat with these guys. So
yeah, man,
cool to do that.
These guys are just this guy.
It's that guy. Nobody else.
Nobody else. Just
one
me.
Man show. Okay,
yep, I'm a one man band. Yeah, man.
Right.
So, well, I mean, I got partner. I got a hunting partner, and I'm working on more partnerships. Like I did some work with Dan from Elk Shape this year, filmed for him. And I think that's how I got in touch, or Baker got in touch with me. But yeah, I had Baker on the podcast a couple weeks ago. He's a hilarious dude. And Brian was on the podcast. He was one of my first guests. And I just been super impressed with Brian and guys like Brian who are willing to give their time to no-name dudes like me. They're just starting out, and so that was cool.
Brian is a class act.
For sure.
He and I have kind of been partners in crime on this podcast deal. I'll kind of give a brief intro on what my responsibility and the work that I do here at EASTMAN'S is. Anything digital media and some business development is a lot of my responsibility. But digital media includes podcasts, EASTMAN'S Tag Hub, all of those things. So circle that back to Brian. Brian and I have been partners in crime since we launched the podcast. He actually started it, and then we said, hey, let's partner together. Cool. And he was pretty jacked up and excited to do that. And now it's, I'm seeing on social media, all these people posting their favorite podcasts from Spotify or whatever, and Eastman's Elevated is in a bunch of them. And so I love that Brian has stuck true to what he does. Yeah. He has done a really good job in making sure people understand that he's about helping them be better hunters. And that's part of our mission statement here at Eastman's, is to help hunters be better hunters. And so he has stuck true to that. And that's what Eastman's Elevated is. We're not walking sound bites. None of us are, like a Baker or even an Aaron Snyder, Yeah. And we know that we're about helping people be better hunters. And so that's what, that's what Eastman's Elevated evolved into.
For sure, man. He that podcast was one of, when I got into Western hunting and backcountry hunting not too long ago, podcast was one of the ways I learned a ton. Yep. And Eastman's was a part of that. So, you guys are doing great stuff over there. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. So, how's your season been, man?
So this year I actually killed, he's another personal best buck. It was a battle to get there. It was not what I expected. So I'll tell that story just so I don't leave everybody cliffhanging.
For sure.
What happened was I scout every year. I've got a routine. It's like this. I'm 38 years old. I've been hunting high country in Wyoming now for basically my entire life.
Yeah.
And so I've got a routine, and it took a lot of lumps and bumps and bruises and that sort of thing to get that routine and get it the way that I wanted and expected. And so the first thing that I do is I scout. But I have learned that for me personally, the most effective scouting is one single trip or two fairly intensive trips. That's what makes the most sense for me personally. And so, at the end of August, Brandon Mason and I, he's and you can see my 2020 hunt on Beyond the Grid on Eastman's YouTube.
Yeah, I was just watching that actually.
That was a fun hunt. And there's a lot to that hunt. That was actually a 7-day process to get to that deer. And full moving camps and all sorts of stuff. Like you get 28 minutes to show 7 days.
Right. Exactly.
So it's kind of a challenge in that regard.
For sure.
And what we did is Brandon and I went in and scouted, no llamas. I go in light and fast, and, we scouted, we found a few good bucks. One in particular, we were fairly excited about, but we were a little concerned about pressure in this area. Like it was something that could play a role. And so Brandon ended up being the only one able to go because shortly after that scouting trip, I see this dry spot on my knee, and I'm like, what in the world is that? And this is kind of probably gross and too much information, but I've told the story now a few times, so may as well tell it again.
Yeah.
So I see it, and then it starts to hurt. I'm like, what in the world? Why is this hurting? This is weird. And so I go and I'm like to the doctor, and he's like, Scott, looks like some cellulitis there. I'm like, what? And it started getting red. Huh. And so what cellulitis is it's an actual infection in your skin. And so I'm like, oh, well, this could put a damper on things. And doctor's like, well, when are you planning on leaving? You should be okay. We'll get you the antibiotics, and it should be gone and cleared up by then.
Yeah.
Well, it did. But one of the things that happens that's super fun, it's a super fun piece of the equation, is for some people, when you start taking the antibiotics, it actually gets worse before it gets better. Like, and I'm like, well, this is pleasant, so like, I don't see any improvement for a little bit. I'm kind of freaking out. And of course my wife is freaking out thinking, we're going to chop off his leg. And I'm like, no, the leg's staying. We're going to figure this thing out. And so after that, I end up having to cancel this hunt with Brandon and it's really a good thing that I did, because I ended up having an allergic reaction to the antibiotics, which killed the bacteria. So, and just for the record, anybody can get cellulitis. If you have a cut, even if you are like the cleanest person every day, you could get it.
Yeah.
Now there are probably conditions that would make it worse. I didn't do any research on that, but of course, Google's not your friend when you're dealing with something like that. It always shows you the worst images that get the most clicks, So I don't recommend looking it up. But I had this allergic reaction that I dealt with for a week. Literally, like, it's just, if you've ever had an allergic reaction to antibiotics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was unpleasant. It was not something I would wish on anyone.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to do my September 15th mule deer hunt. Okay. And so I bagged it. I talked to Ike. I called the guy who I rent the llamas from and said, hey, can I go a little bit later? And he's like, yeah, perfect. Take it. And you got him for a week. And so, then we did some shuffling, found a camera guy who would come with me, and we ended up going in, and it was a struggle to find deer. And I'm going to make some changes next year to where and how I hunt and set up camp. I think I've got a little bit different plan, and we'll see. Hopefully this helps with a little bit of pressure too. This area wasn't as bad as what Brandon experienced. Where Brandon went in with the llamas, there were 6 camps in his drainage.
Oof.
Like, yeah, it was bad. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was a challenge for him. He was a little discouraged, to say the least, would be a good way to put it. And so he ended up coming out and hunting some lower country, trying to, do some low basin hopping and things like that. He did not get a deer, but he also had a really good elk tag that he needed to go and take care of. So he came back and just set up to go elk hunting the next week. So that worked out for him, because he killed a good bull. But I'm hunting, and we're not seeing a lot. I'm finding smaller bucks. And so tell my camera guy, I'm like, all right, we're going to go check this other basin right here. And I set him on one side of the group of trees, and I sat on the other side, because I was having to actually game the sun a little bit, where you pick where the sun's at, and you kind of have to, you do perpendicular to it.
Who was your camera guy, if you don't mind me asking?
My camera guy was somebody you've never even heard of. His name was Evan.
Okay.
He actually helps. He works at ski resorts, believe it or not, like does event stuff.
Okay.
So, it was not one of our normal like guys that you see in the magazine. Oftentimes it's Brandon Mason and I together when we go on a hunt. He and I do a lot of hunting together when it's filmed for EASTMAN'S. And so my camera guy was on the other side, and he's, non-resident, doesn't have a tag. He's just there having fun. He was there to, he's a backpacker himself. So he was really just enjoying the trip as much as anything else. And so I set him on one side where he didn't have to fight with the sun, because he's learning how to glass in this whole process. And he's the one who finds the buck. Of all
good thing he didn't have a tag.
I know, right? If he'd have been another Wyoming resident, we'd have been changing roles here, because that's kind of my rule: is if you spot it, it's yours.
Got it.
So you get first dibs. I mean, and we've always operated that way with me and my buddies, even before I worked here. And so we made a plan for the next day, because we saw where the bucks were heading. Yeah, and I killed him the next morning. It was nice. We got in there, and it worked pretty good. So we'll see how the footage turns out. That's always kind of an X factor. Sure. But he's a 180s type buck. He's got 30.5 inches wide. So I was pretty thrilled with him, as far as how he looked and what he, what kind of buck he was. Yeah. So we got him all packed out, got camp all packed out. Llamas worked hard. It was a long day, because we ended up dividing and conquering, hauling some stuff out, and then getting the rest of, I was getting the deer. So that was kind of a interesting day. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. And so that was the highlight of my season.
Nice. So is mule deer kind of your primary focus?
Yes, I would say I am. In September and October, I am a fanatical mule deer nut. After that, I do a lot of waterfowl hunting. Nice. And so,
I noticed when we were out there antelope hunting, like all these little ponds in the public land just full of ducks, and nobody hunting them at all.
Yep.
So
and it's it can be pretty fun to hunt ducks out here in the West. If shameless plug, if you're into waterfowl, go give Todd Helms and Wingman a follow. That's Eastman's waterfowl brand.
Cool.
And he's done a really good job building some really cool content there.
Yeah.
And of course, by default, a lot of our waterfowling is what you can do out here West. And it's a lot different. You're not necessarily fighting the crowds on some of these places.
Right.
There is some public land that you will fight crowds, but basically the bigger the public land, the better.
Yeah.
And you're not fighting a 3-week season where everybody has to go get it done. You've got a long season to be able to do that. So
I'm coming from the East Coast, and that was how I grew up, started hunting, was birds and waterfowl. Because my dad's a big waterfowl guy. And so that's kind of how I cut my teeth and everything. So yeah, man, pretty cool.
It is. And it's fun. I didn't grow up waterfowl hunting. I would have loved to do it, but I grew up in Southwest Wyoming. And so that's a place where waterfowl hunting in the middle of the desert is not ideal. There's a few rivers there where there will be ducks, but they don't stay very long because they don't have the feed. They don't have the ag fields. But if there's ag close to a few of those rivers, oh man, you can get some pushes of ducks.
Yeah.
So
I am curious to hear a little bit more about hunting with llamas, because if people are listening to this, we're recording this on December 2nd. Yesterday was the Idaho non-resident tag madness. So a lot of people were involved in that, myself included. I was number 13,000 in the waiting line, but somehow I actually did get our kind of second choice unit, and actually picked up a mule deer tag and a concurrent elk tag in the same unit. But the unit I picked is it's very rugged. I've heard a couple guys say it's some of the most rugged country in the lower 48. But I like that. I like a challenge. That being said, I am kind of looking at different options and considering, what's available. Llamas are something that I've never had any experience hunting with. It looks really cool. Looks interesting. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about that. What's that like? And, does it add a large level of complexity to a hunt, or is it kind of just a luxury, or a little of both?
It's both. Number one, and I've said this in the magazine. So we've got a few good articles that can kind of describe it a little better. So the first time I took llamas was in 2018, and I've used them ever since. And I really enjoy it. But part of it is I grew up around stock. Now, let me be 100% clear. There are guys that are horsemen. Okay. Because I grew up around horses, I'm comfortable around them, but that does not make me a horseman. Guys like Steven Rosso or my buddy Johannes Slabert, who they can take a horse and they can literally break it and build trust. Like, we're not talking guys that that rough house with the horses or anything like that. I watched both of these guys over the last couple of years, where they have taken horses and they have literally, Johannes does 100% wild Mustangs. And then I watched Steven take a colt from, basically Greenbroke on social media, and watched him all the way to this year, where that was his like mainstay horse that he used. So I use that to say there are people who are like horsemen or animal people. I am not one of them. Ike is actually really good with stock. He grew up around a lot of it. You can see that Mike Eastman, obviously, in the books and the family history, that he was around stock and things like that. And so Ike and I decided in 2018 we were going to take llamas into a spot where I had done a lot of mule deer hunting, and we were going to make a focused, intense effort, because number one, I didn't draw an elk tag. And so I've kind of quit applying for elk tags that compete with my seasons for mule deer.
Gotcha.
I really want to be a focused, intense mule deer hunter. And so what happened then is we tested it out on a scouting trip. We found some bucks that we were interested in. Ironically, I went back and scouted to go check them out one more time for like a quick bonsai overnight trip. And I ended up finding a different buck, the one that I killed in 2018. And we found out that llamas are great for the pack outs. They don't haul nearly as much as, say, a horse does.
Right.
They are a lot easier to manage than horses. The only difference is that you don't get to ride them. You still have to be in good enough shape to hike in.
Sure.
You are to some level still tied to water, but you can work with a lot less water than what a horse needs.
Right.
So for instance, this year I was able to take it was a 5-gallon, one of those expandable 5-gallon jugs. And we filled it up at our last possible point with water, which was still 1.5 miles from where I was planning on camping. And I knew there was water in some other places that I could bring the llamas to, but I still had to plan, like, I might not get there for a few days. So that 5 gallons lasted about 3 days for those llamas. So they need a lot less.
That's pretty good.
But you still have to logistically plan for that.
Sure.
You also have to have enough feed for them, and you have to have an open enough area where you camp. Scott Woodruff, the guy at Lander Llama Company that we work with, he's got this setup where it looks like, those dog chains that you screw into the ground.
Yeah.
And you leave it there. So he's got like a heavy duty version that's worked up for the llamas.
Gotcha.
And so you have to have enough space. So depending on how many llamas you have to have enough space to have all them tied up. Brandon, with 6 camps being in that area and some of the others having horses and another one having llamas, well, the issue then became that there wasn't enough space in this drainage,
Right.
And so that said, he had to manage accordingly, and that was a challenge for him.
Yeah.
So there's good and bad. I'm going to keep using them because I like it. I like that my body's not nearly as beat up afterwards, and I will continue to deal with that. That I guess I'll call a little bit of extra headache there, but it works just fine.
What's
for me?
What's like ballpark, if you don't mind me asking, like day rate for running stock like that?
I think Scott does somewhere around $70 a day.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
It's not terrible. Scott, I apologize if I got that wrong. You can email me later. But Lander Llama Company is who I use. He provides all the panniers, the saddle, everything that goes with it is part of that rate. And you do pay a deposit up front. Sure. And he will do like an hour-long training session on how to put the saddles on. His system's pretty bulletproof.
Yeah.
If you can tie a latigo knot like with the cinch, you can do it. It's pretty straightforward. And if you can weigh the bags, I mean, you'll be fine. He recommends you don't go higher than 70 pounds on those llamas.
Okay.
And so if you do one, here's the way you have to kind of mentally prepare that if you kill a deer, like basically an entire llama then is going to be dedicated to that deer.
Right.
So that means that at least one llama's offerings, what it carried for you, is now going to go on your back.
Right.
So what I struggle to get up to 70 pounds just because I've been such a lightweight backpacker for so long.
Yeah.
So if I get to 60, that's like really heavy, even in a llama. And that's before water, of course. But I always start off without water, but I go to places I know where I can get water at the last possible point. Then I fill up, and then it's just one grind rather than haul water in with me.
Yeah.
But that's the advantage of being a resident in a place where you know those things.
For sure.
So that's how I've managed and used the llamas. Don't buy them. I would tell anybody, even people who live out here, don't buy them unless you are that dude who's going to haul them into the mountains every single weekend.
Yeah.
Because if, just like a horse, if it's out of shape, it's going to be a pain. Right. The difference with a horse is the horse will do it because you ask it to, but it starts getting dangerous once a horse gets tired. That's when it falls on you. Whereas a llama, when it gets tired, it's just going to tell you, look, dude, I got to lay down, man. You're killing me here. And so renting them from Scott, he does wilderness trips all summer long with them. Like he's literally booked out.
Yeah,
exactly. And they're in better shape than I am, so that's a pretty good deal there to get llamas that are that in shape and that prepared. So
nice, man. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it definitely add a different element, but it could be kind of cool.
yep.
So I'm about to think about that. Tell me a little bit more about Eastman's Tag Hub, and we talked for a little bit yesterday, and you mentioned something about like a 4-state strategy that sounded kind
Yep.
of interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit
Okay.
about that, because I'm, like I said, my listeners know, like, I'm all in, but I'm still pretty new to the game,
Okay.
so I'd love to hear a little bit about that stuff.
So Eastman's Tag Hub, I'll say it was like 30 years in the making, because it started off with what we called the MRS, which is the Members Research Section, which has been at the back half of the journals for years. Like Mike Eastman started it as tips on how to come out and get your license. And then Guy Eastman took it and he took it to a whole new level where he broke it down. He started giving rankings: blue chip, green chip, and yellow chip. And yellow's marginal, blue being the best, green is just a good hunt. We've done our best to standardize that based on trophy quality for the hunt that happens inside a unit or an area, not necessarily for and that's a projection. We're trying to project for the next year based on everything that we know, plus some proprietary algorithms. There are things that that we've worked on and seen trends and numbers that we can put in,
Nice.
and so it works really well with that. And so what we've done is we've taken it and we've put all of the antlered Western hunts in all 11 Western states. We've taken them and we put them in a digital sortable form. And so I can literally say, you would have told me that you have 1 point last year in Wyoming for antelope. You told me that was kind of the situation you did in a special draw. I could take that and I could take that antelope filter. I can put it on there or on the antelope layer, and I could literally show you every unit that you could draw with 1 point through a couple of sorting features.
Nice.
And so this is going to sound funny in our mobile digital age, but we realize that not a single one of us in our office does real research or real applications on their phone. Like when you actually sit down and do hunt research, the vast majority of the time it is on your desktop.
Sure.
And so we actually sat down and said, okay, because of this, and because we know that from 35 years of experience doing this and working with guys who want to hunt out west, most are doing their research on their desktop.
Yeah.
So what
serious research is usually on the computer.
Yes. Yeah. And so some guys do it on their iPad. So the iPad experience is pretty similar to desktop. But we built this where it made it real easy. And there's a giant chart at the bottom that you can click on it. You can click on it on an area or a unit, and it'll highlight it up on the map. You can take all the data that we've got and it'll show it on the right side of the screen. It's pretty impressive tool with what it does. And so tie that into my 4-state strategy, I should probably keep some secrets here on this, because now everybody's going to know how I do this. No, I'm kidding. We know full well that this is part of what we do, and we help Western hunters be better hunters, and we help people get out and enjoy the field. We help them chase the adventure.
Yeah, man.
It is part of that, and we want to help them notch their tag. That's why we called it Tag Hub. You don't just nobody leaves on a hunt without wanting to notch their tag. That's a big part of the experience. And so what we chose to do is, or what we do with a 4-state strategy, and Mike Eastman did this years ago, and we're having some conversations about encouraging guys to update that to a little bit more broad because of some of the things that have happened. So being a mule deer guy, here's how I do it. Wyoming is my bread and butter. I live in a state where I can get a general tag every single year. Is that sustainable? I don't know. But because I live in Wyoming, it's going to be my bread and butter.
Yeah.
So then I've got 2 high opportunity states next. Number 1 being Montana, and then number 2 being Nevada. And why I say high opportunity, because Nevada's a random draw. Like I could bore you with the way their system works. It's bonus points squared with random assignment of numbers for your order in line, similar to what you did in Idaho. Oh, oops. Talk with my hands too much.
It's okay.
So similar to what you had in Idaho yesterday, where they assigned you a random number. That kind of happens inside, but it's based on your number of applications. And so, every single application gets a random number. And so it just kind of depends on where you fall inside that with Nevada. So I could have a chance every single year in Nevada.
Yeah.
And so by applying in Montana, I should get to hunt Montana probably every second or third year is the way the rotation is going to go now, with the applications that are there. It used to be a sure bet, and there used to be leftover licenses, not after COVID. And if this year's application numbers are the same as what they were last year, I'm just going to be brutally honest. This feels like it may be what we're dealing with for the next 10 years as far as numbers go. As far as number of applicants go, because there's a lot of people who are going to remember that man, this kind of stunk not having meat at Walmart.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are not okay with that. And then I've got Nevada. Well, now my next play is that I know I am so far behind in Colorado on points that I'm going to build a strategy where landowner tags are something that are a thing for me. And so I'm going to save up so every few years I can go and buy a landowner tag. And it really depends on where. My preference would be a third season hunt inside Colorado. And why I want a third season hunt is that won't compete with my season dates for my bread and butter state, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And so because of where Idaho is at, as far as their system is going to change here real soon, I think, especially if it never used to be a big deal when they opened up their license sales. Like, people used to wait till the very end of the season to go buy Idaho tags. Well, now, because it's become so competitive, they buy it that day. I can't see that being sustainable. There's probably going to be a straight draw at some point. I don't have any
Plus,
insider
it's
information
like
on
it's
that,
so hard if you have a group or something. Like, we had 3 guys, and one guy was like 9,000. I was 13,000. Another guy was like 16,000. And so we got, we all agreed, all right, this is our top 3 choices. 2 of us got the tag we wanted. The other one got there and they were sold out, and he's kind of up the creek without a paddle, So, but I guess that's the way it goes. I mean, it is a weird system. At the same time, it is kind of nice to know, okay, I have 2 tags now. Like, I'm not waiting for draw results and stuff. So it's, I guess it's got its positive and negatives, but it does seem like kind of unsustainable.
What's going to be unsustainable is the system's ability to handle the number of people that were put at the back of the line.
Right.
Because if there's a whole bunch of people that did not get tags, they're going to complain that it was unfair.
Right.
And so, because you really can't call this an over-the-counter system anymore when a random number was assigned.
Right. It's not truly over-the-counter at that point.
Yep. So we'll see we'll see if they're forced to do anything. Like I said, I have no insider knowledge that that's going to happen, but if you look at what's happened in other places, in particular with mule deer, because mule deer are a more finite resource than elk.
Yeah.
And elk can repopulate a lot quicker than mule deer can too. They're not as subject to other factors.
Yeah.
Like elk are. Elk can figure out migration patterns and do things a bit different, whereas mule deer really struggle.
It seems like,
with those things.
I might be wrong, but at least in Idaho anyway, the elk tags sold out quicker and in more number than the mule deer tags. So it seems like maybe more people are wanting to hunt elk. Which maybe is good for mule deer, I guess.
It's good and bad. So elk are sexy right now. I mean, it's just the way that it is.
True.
If you go on YouTube, everybody wants to go on an archery elk hunt.
Yeah. It's like the thing.
Yep. And so
I want to be Cam Hanes.
Yeah. There's and
like, I know random people that don't even hunt. Like my CrossFit coach, like, he doesn't even hunt, but like, he got into, like, he just bought a bow because like he thought it was cool, and like, Cam Hanes, you know what I mean? Like, he wants to get into it, but in a way it's really good for, I mean, it is good for hunting. It might make more competition, but it, like you said, it's like cool now. Like, even guys who don't hunt are like, whoa, I want to go archery elk hunting. You know what I mean? So
I hear people talk about the competition, and I need to just sit down and do this and figure it out. But one of the things that I see as the baby boomers are leaving the sport like like at an incredible rate.
Yeah.
Some of them are still applying for hunts because they've done it for years. But when most of them are in their lower 60s all the way up to, you know, mid 70s, a lot of them are coming out of the system. So like we get emails regularly. Hey, I'm 67 years old and I drew this third season Colorado deer tag, and it's a hard hunt, you know, and they're like, what do I do? And at that point, we're like, get an outfitter. You know, you need the help. Go. You were invested in this system for 25 years worth of points. Go get the help. For sure. You know, for most of those guys, if they're approaching us at that point, they don't mind doing that. But they're going to leave that hunting pool just from not physically being able to, and some of them will pass away over time. Mm-hmm. And so we are seeing a changeover in the guard. We'll see if those numbers are, we'll see if they're similar. There's going to be a lot of data that comes out in the next few years, because like Colorado had like 70,000 more applications last year than the year before. Now, how many of those applications are for people that were already hunting, but they're making sure they get their cow tag rather than relying on the leftover? Yeah. You know, how many of those were that? Right. How many were actually new hunters? And the only thing that's going to prove that out is time, to see if that's the trend that continues. Because I know that's happened in Wyoming. Just anecdotally, in our office, there's 13 of us here that are on site, and it's about every one of us applied for our antlerless tags rather than wait for a leftover, because it's like, nope, we're making sure we got it. Yeah. So.
That's well, it's good and bad. I guess it's, you know, can be good for hunting, but also, like I said, more competition. So I do have a selfish question for you. Okay. So I have my October kind of set with that Idaho hunt. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up hunting whitetails. I don't know. For some reason, for me, I'm actually more attracted to mule deer right now than I am elk. Mm-hmm. So
you're my friend.
I don't know why. I love deer. Like seeing some of that footage from y'all's videos, like those giant like velvet bucks on that hillside. And when I was in New Mexico with Dan, we saw some banger like mule deer, and this is like the first mule deer I've seen up close. I literally saw them and thought they were elk at first. They were so big. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, those are elk for sure. And Dan's like, nah, I don't think. And he's like, no, those are just giant mule deer. So anyway, so I'm going to be going into this year with 2 Montana deer points and 2 Wyoming deer points. Do you have any recommendations for, I don't know, maybe it's kind of not the best question to ask publicly, but
let me tell you, I'll do broad stroke strategies.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
So you don't have enough in Wyoming to do anything yet. Okay. Just to be realistic, for if you're actually chasing, you know, deer that looks like this.
And the other point, the other part of this equation is, being that I've never killed a mule deer, I don't need a giant. Like, I'd be happy with like a good representative buck.
Go do the general tag in Montana first and save your points in Wyoming, because you as a non-resident are going to be better off saving your points for long-term on mule deer in Wyoming than you would be for something else. You know, like what I would do if I were in your shoes, if I were building your 4-state strategy, make Montana and Idaho kind of your rotation of where you would go and try and do regularly. As long as Idaho gives you a chance, you'll be fine. You know, so I would go get in on that system and learn how to hunt mule deer there. This year, what I would, if I were, you know, giving you advice just 100% as a subscriber, and, you know, do your research on the unit you drew, you know, like, and because now you know where you're hunting in Idaho. Yeah. Which is so nice. Yes. When you're hunting for mule deer, you're hunting for country as much as you are hunting for deer themselves. And you need to be in the right spot for where they are at that moment. Because it's probably an October hunt in Idaho, I'm going to recommend, they're going to be hardhorn then. September 15th, mule deer might be hardhorn. They might not be in region G and H here. And so I you can still hunt them in the high basins some. Although I will say archery season is changing that. It's putting pressure on them. Archery elk season, like there's a lot more guys doing elk hunts. And so that is a challenge there. But what I would highly recommend you do is go get your first deer in Idaho, and then either bank your points in Montana so you're almost guaranteed for next year, or if you can figure out how to swing those two together, a realistic expectation in Montana for like a public land mule deer is you could get a 160 if you hunt really hard and have a good spot. But it's hard. Like it is a challenge because they hunt them during the rut. So the age class on public land is just a challenge. Yeah. Can you find big mule deer? Absolutely. They're there. We see a few giants from Montana every year. But where we see the vast majority of the giant deer come from, and is the hard to draw limited quota, limited entry hunts. Yeah. That's just how it works. So it's Colorado, Nevada, region G and H, and Wyoming. There's a lot of places that we see really big mule deer come from consistently, but for you as a non-resident, even G and H now is like 6-8 points, depending on circumstance and year, that sort of thing. And could get worse. You never know. You never know how that's going to work. For sure. So if I were you, save up Wyoming points, then stay in the Idaho strategy, then Montana, figure out how to do it every other year ish, so you get a rotation there.
So and then try to pick up a general tag in Montana this year. That's a draw tag too, right? Yep. And general just means that it's like multiple units, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So the general season in Montana, and Dan Picard is a really good resource for this. He writes our MRS. And so Tag Hub members, you get access to ask questions. We've got the 2-minute tips. So Dan's going to cover this in a 2-minute tip. He doesn't know that, but this is a relatively new deal. But the 2-minute tips is we talk about all the different things that are kind of affecting states. So what is a general tag in Montana? Well, the MRS author, who is Dan, would give a breakdown of what a general tag looks like. What are the combos? How does that all work? He did several videos, or he did a video a while back on how you pick out a deer hunt in Montana. So it'd actually be a great video. I'll send you a link to that. That's up on our YouTube. For sure. But when you say a general tag, that usually means that you have a broad range of places you can go. And so most states, that is kind of the way a general tag works. Personally, I'm kind of hoping that they start making us pick a little bit more of where we have to hunt, because I think that will help with management a little bit better, in particular here in Wyoming. Montana's challenge is that you have so many hunters that, and the November season is very ingrained, and it's a big tradition there. So that's the bigger issue with that, as far as Montana changing their season. So they probably won't. So they'll manage Montana's strategy basically has them managing for the top end. They don't get much past 4 years old as far as mule deer go. Yeah. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. I'd also start point banking in Colorado. And then maybe, and so then maybe Nevada too. Started buying points. Okay.
I started everywhere I could.
So you're on the right path. But you just have to pick it right. Don't put yourself in. If you've already got a hunt in Idaho, and you've got a pretty good chance of drawing in Montana, don't put in Nevada this year. Right. Like manage it so that you're going to be, you have good odds. You're stacking the deck in your favor all the time. For sure. And then what that does is that also allows you to say, say you save up your 8 points in Wyoming and you go do a backcountry awesome hunt for mule deer. Well, then you may 4 years later decide, you know what? I want to go hunt one of those desert units that doesn't take as many points to do. I'm just going to go do that. But that allows you to develop some certainty, or you can apply with your 4 points and hope for a few of the random tags in harder to draw like G and H. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't chase max points or trying to get to that max point pool on any of it. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah. The we've now got more max point holders applying for like 3 tags in some of these like 101 and 102. There are a whole bunch of people with max points that apply for that, and there are only a few tags that are given away to non-residents. And then on top of that, you've now got so you've got basically this giant max point pool that keeps growing, and you're only cycling a few out all the time. So that's just something to kind of consider and think about and look at. So.
Well, cool, man. Well, definitely looking forward to checking out Tag Hub. That sounds like a really cool tool with all those like filtering stuff.
It is, man.
A lot you can learn from it. Are you a spring bear guy?
I am not, man. You need to talk to Dan. We need to get Dan Picar on the podcast.
Yeah. I definitely want to hit him on. Because I was thinking about trying to pick up a spring bear tag in my Idaho unit to kind of scout and bear hunt simultaneously, because going to Idaho is not I can't just drive to Idaho.
No, it's not an easy thing coming from the East Coast all the way over there. So.
But anyway, that's cool, man. Yeah, it sounds like a really awesome tool. And yeah, looking forward to getting Dan on here at some point. I love what you guys do with Off the Grid and Off the Grid TV and all that stuff. So because my background is I was a cam op and a producer for a TV show out here for like 7 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the 700 Club? Pat Robertson?
Yes, actually I have.
I worked for the 700 Club.
Okay.
They're based here. And so anyway, which actually kind of goes into my next question. So I was listening to a podcast, and this is sort of one of the themes of the podcast, kind of shifting gears here, but I was listening to one of your podcasts with Brian and just kind of reading through the lines a little bit of kind of what you were talking about a little bit. Are you a believer by chance?
Yep, I am. Actually, I was a full-time youth pastor for 12 years. And we actually, ironically, I actually moved here to do collegiate ministry.
Oh, nice.
And so that was a little bit different than, because, well, let me tell the story. And it'll all make sense.
Yeah.
So I was doing full-time youth ministry. I was getting a little bit older, and we're kind of sorting through and I'd been married a little while, and so we're kind of sorting through, what do we do? Is this what we keep doing? Is this how this keeps working? What does that look like? And what happened was I went to this youth event in Graybull, Wyoming, which is about 45 minutes here in Powell, where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a college ministry there, and we've been doing college ministry in Rock Springs, where I was a pastor, and we really enjoyed it. And so I was kind of passionate about it. And so I was talking to the pastor and going, why isn't there one here in Northwest College? And he's like, well, there isn't. So why don't you come do it? And so I really didn't have an excuse. And so Lord kind of laid that on our hearts, and we started praying about it. Okay, when do we do it? Well, my wife, she was actually looking at the classifieds here in Powell, and she found out that there was a job at EASTMAN'S available. And obviously, we were getting EASTMAN'S videos when I was in high school, like of Mike and all the bucks on the winter range. And, Popeye was a legend to all of us, so it was kind of, okay, I'll apply.
Yeah.
So I did, I had no idea, but I was actually qualified for it because I've got 2 degrees. One's in practical theology, and then one is in communications with an emphasis in public relations is what that was. But I'd been doing a bunch of freelance writing and had learned how to do some tech things that kind of made me qualified for this job. And so I applied, and bear in mind, this is in December when I applied, and I was expecting that I was going to kind of figure out how to move in May at the end of the school year, so that just a transition period and kind of gave me enough time to do, to help out. And I sent my resume, and I had no idea how long this process would take. 6:45 the next morning, Ike had sent me a email saying, hey, let's talk today. And I'm like, all right, Lord, I'm listening. And so the first question Ike asked me was like, so why do you want to move to Powell, Wyoming? And I said, well, I actually want to move up there to start a college ministry, and I can't survive on what that pays, so I've got to do this bivocationally. He's like, Oh, well, that's awesome. We love having people on staff here who serve in the community and, do things like that. And
Cool.
so we'd love to, we'd love to see that. And then, we have the discussions like, Scott, you will never have an issue with me with, you needed to do ministry and things like that, get things done. And as long as,
Nice.
I don't feel like you're taking advantage of me, it won't be an issue. And I'm still doing it 8 years later.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, my wife and I love doing the college ministry.
That's cool.
I've got hunting goals, but at the end of my life, like the big bucks and stuff up on my wall will be cool, but I really honestly believe the people that I discipled and shared my faith with and helped them grow would definitely trump that by
100%.
1,000%.
Totally,
it's
man.
it's
like when you get to heaven, Jesus is going to be like, good job helping this guy. Not like, oh man, you crushed it on that buck.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, when I look at the whole circumstances and the way that operates and works, that's where my value in life is. When I look at the way that I'm raising my kids, that's another piece of the equation. So that's how that works.
Awesome,
that's
man.
a fairly important piece of life, is doing that ministry. It's what God has called us to.
Yeah.
And I say peace because, raising my family is number one priority. There is nothing, more important than that. Sure. There is no greater indicator of who you are than your kids.
Yeah.
Just to be, actually I'm stealing that from Ike, because he said that to me before, and he's right. When you look at the way your kids behave and the way that they turn out, and sometimes it's a long run thing. Sometimes your kids make poor decisions, and then
for sure,
then the ship gets righted later, and it's the work that you did then that's there. So I've used hunting my entire ministry career as a tool for ministry.
Oh, cool.
I've brought a lot of young men hunting who had never been before. Sometimes they got into it, sometimes they didn't, but it's pretty amazing what can happen when people challenge themselves.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's a big piece of the equation there too.
That's
is
cool.
That it opens them up to conversations you never otherwise could have.
Yeah. And I'm, like I said, it's kind of a theme of the podcast. I'm actually currently full-time staff at a church. I'm looking to possibly go more into this space full-time, maybe. Actually got some stuff in transition right now, as we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday, but yeah, the TV show I worked for is a Christian TV show. And I was listening to your podcast and I heard you say something about being a resounding gong. And I was like, that's Paul right there. This dude is a Christian for sure.
Yep. So I've got some of the isms down for sure, man.
Yeah.
Some of that seminary speak that gets tossed
around. Well, it's so subtle,
Yep.
Yeah, and I heard you say blessed a couple times instead of lucky, and I was like, I bet this dude's. So earlier we were talking about, before we started recording, about routines, and we were talking about hitting the gym and stuff like that in the morning. And I've always found that spiritual discipline, spiritual fitness takes discipline, just like physical fitness. So so I've incorporated that into my routine as well. Like the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is spend time with the Lord. So do you have like a routine that you kind of do with that as well?
So what I had to do, and this has changed multiple times. If I need to pray about something, I dedicate a time to it. It's not
just like this podcast. You got to have a time, a location, and just if you're going to talk to God, it doesn't just happen. You got to have a plan.
Yep. And so what I've done is there are several, and part of this is my life as a pastor kind of compartmentalized this. Believe it or not, sometimes church staffers are the ones who read their Bible the least, as sad as that may sound.
Totally.
And so what I had to do is I started figuring out that, if I do cardio at the end of every workout, I can get through the Bible listening to it every 18 months.
Nice.
And then there's always some level of Bible study that I'm doing. So whether it's the Bible study that I am teaching my college students, where we're going through 1 Timothy this semester with those students.
That's a good
one. And so it was one that they needed and that I was excited to share with them. So I'm studying that. I'm listening to the word as a whole, which keeps that 30,000 foot there. And then, we go through scripture with our kids pretty regularly. We've got a picture book Bible that I made it a point to read with my oldest two girls, that they've been through the Bible probably 50 or 60 times in this picture book format.
Wow,
so they understand. Cool. And I don't say that lightly because it's an easy read. Okay. Like, I haven't read the whole Bible to them like 50 or 60 times. It's a picture book Bible,
sure,
but it's a Bible that's designed to show Jesus throughout scripture, because that gets lost a lot. And so I've been through that with my girls. And so the discipline is the everyday portion. I realize that I can't do my Bible study first thing when I wake up. I'm too tired.
Yeah.
I don't get enough of it. I don't do well with it. So it's something that is an issue there. So it made more sense for me to go work out, get that, listen, and then dedicated time for the lessons that I'm teaching and things like that. So, there are different pieces of that equation. Then the other part is managing your emotional health. Like this hunting is that for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I have a camera, it's a little tougher for that to be there. So I have to make sure that there's a few hunts every year where I just went with my dad on a hunt. We didn't kill anything. It was a hard hunt. I poorly timed the migration related to all this. So it's one of those things that it just had to change. The way that I thought about it. If it's a work hunt, I can't use that as an emotional release.
Yeah.
But then now that I've been married, almost 10 years, part of your emotional health has to be your relationship with your wife too, as a believer. And so you have to really enjoy that time. We've got 4 kids, so we're learning how to do that well. Yes, we know where they come from, just before that joke gets made. So we, having the 4 kids, we've had to figure out how to give time to each other, and it's hard. I'm not perfect at it. It's a lot of work, but there's emotional health tied to that. Spending time around other people who fill you up too, and making sure that I'm somebody who's capable of filling up. Don't get into negative Nancy type conversations and things like that.
100%.
So for me, that's where a lot of the health comes. But if I'm doing all of those things well, and helping my wife do all those things well, then we're all going to be spiritually healthy.
For sure, man. Well, that's awesome, dude. Like, that's really good to hear, and love connecting with other believers and talking about, spirituality on the podcast and stuff. And so that's cool, man. Well, I feel like I definitely need to have you back on the podcast at some time, because there's more stuff we could get into, but, I think that's all I had for this one, man. But tell people where they can find you, find Eastman's and all that stuff, and even Tag Hub.
Yep. So taghub.eastmans.com or taghub.eastmans.com.
Nice.
I'll send you the link so you can put a lower third, so it don't
be
confused or whatever, or put it in the description.
Yeah.
Follow all of Eastman's social at Eastman's Hunting Journals. My personal is at Eating the Wild _EHJ. So you should be able to search EHJ and find it too. I wanted associated with that business account. So that is where they can find me there. We have some different cool things going on right now at Eastman's. If you want to give 3 subscriptions, like this is kind of a big deal this year with supply issues. If you give 3 subscriptions, we've got a Cryptech shirt that you can get with that. Oh, nice. So, you can gift yourself and give those 3 to 3 hunters that So it's kind of what we've got going on at Eastman's right now. So
cool.
And you can find all this at eastmans.com too. So Tag Hub's right there, front and center. You can see that there. So I hesitate to tell what we have going on right now as far as the offer, because that changes like every other week. But we're always giving away something with a Tag Hub Elite annual membership. So good deals.
Cool, man. Well, it's been great talking to you, and I appreciate your time, and thanks for reaching out.
Hey, no problem. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yeah, man.